following program is a SUTV student production. The views expressed are not necessarily those of Salisbury University, the University System of Maryland, its regents, administration, officers, employees, or representatives.
Such as Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Dane.
At 7:30 in the morning beside the Wayne Street parking lot.
Good evening. We begin tonight with our coverage of diversity at SU. Before we left for spring break, the Salisbury Student Committee played host to a forum in the Purdue Auditorium. In a session billed as a minority report, student members of the committee presented statistics related to diversity and asked for feedback from those who attended. We spoke to some of those who helped to organize the event.
I would say that this meeting was very successful. I would say that it was definitely more successful than I thought it would have been. I really appreciate everyone's candidness and everyone's truthfulness about what has been going on our campus. As well, I feel like a lot of great things came out of it, a lot of people's comments, and especially with the faculty being here.
Really pleased about the turnout. I'm pleased that administrators were here, that we actually got to hear what they thought about it in an open forum, that students were actually able to communicate with them and say some of the things that aren't really easy to say. I really was proud of the amount that people were willing to reveal about this campus, and it shows that people are just tired of not having their voice heard, and they're ready for something to actually change, whether it's physically, mentally, socially. We're really ready to change this campus for the better and to leave a lasting legacy that involves diversity, reform, and cultural awareness. I think that by this auditorium, by this forum, we were able to come and bring all these ideas together and maybe, come out with something when we put this into a diversity initiative.
We also spoke to Ruth Teleno, the president of OLAS at Salisbury, who discussed some of the things she'd like to see come from this and other diversity events.
I think it's fantastic, the minority population voicing their opinions. However, on both ends, I see a lot of minority students on campus that are either not invited to the conversation or don't feel like they're welcome, or just they don't feel like it's their conversation to take a part of. And then there are faculty and staff that also don't come or don't feel that they should come, maybe for fear, maybe they're afraid or don't know how to say what's on their mind. But at the end of the day, talking can only do so much. I would like to see a lot of the ideas that were implemented, and that's probably the greatest thing I saw at the minority report. Those solutions proposed, I really hope that in the years to come, the faculty and staff take those into serious consideration, because that's at the end of the day what the whole thing is about.
And SUTV's Sarah Wood joins me now with some of the reactions from the university.
Yes, Eli, concerns related to diversity and opening up the dialogue between the administration and students have continued to be topics of discussion here at SU. As you just saw, the student-led minority report allowed students to open up this conversation with peers and faculty in attendance. SUTV reached out to the university and invested parties to see what their next steps are in addressing their concerns and what they have been doing in recent years.
The deans of the respective colleges here at the institution, two of which I've spoken with directly, have talked about the fact that while concerns aired by the students at the most recent meeting that was had, the minority report meeting, were indeed valid and legitimate, some of the information upon which those concerns were based was not entirely correct. And so instances where there were deficiencies or a lax present or a shortage of sort of material or whatever present, some of the deans have pointed out the fact that there are projects, there are programs already in place that are attempting to address some of these concerns that have not yet been fully investigated or explored. And so in the near future here, I'll be hosting a meeting with Dean Martin Paraboom of the Fulton School to talk with student leaders here on campus to alert them to already existing programs, already existing initiatives, as well as to get their input on what other things need to be done specifically within the Fulton School. So yes, there is support administratively from the president on down, and there is support that I feel present from my colleagues and my peers.
I think in general, it's very interesting to have the text responses, because I think that those responses to me suggested that when sort of confronted with the question, people answer the question in a way that it was sort of a reflexive kind of answer. And again, I don't mean to say that that in a way to discount their responses, because those were their feelings, those were the thoughts that they wanted to express at that moment. But it made me think that to really give a good answer specific to this community and where we are at Salisbury University at this particular moment, we do indeed need to communicate more. And so I would really love to continue this discussion. And I spoke with Dr. King 2 days after the meeting to say I would love to talk with the steering committee or with whomever to keep this dialogue going, because what this represents to me is the best of liberal arts, because this is students actually thinking about what they want their academic experience here to be and what they want it to include. I would much rather have that kind of dialogue and that kind of exchange than to say, here's sort of the time-honored prescription for liberal arts education. And I think there's a lot in there that's enduring. I mean, history's not going to go away, and political science isn't going to go away, and psychology is not going to go away. But I really love the opportunity to engage students in sort of thinking about what it's all about, why we're here, and to empower them to say, here are the things that we really care about.
There are a lot of things that are going on in the background, and we probably need to look for better ways of how we can get that information out, how we can make sure students are aware and the whole campus community is aware of the many things that are already occurring, because there are a lot of things that are occurring across campus. But again, I think sometimes when you're in an institution of almost 9,000 students with another 1,000 faculty and staff, things get done in silos, and they may be done behind the scenes, and the whole campus might not know about it. So I think there's some food for thought on how we can better articulate those things that are going on.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'm now joined by Tyler Gibson, the president of SGA, to discuss a range of issues, including diversity and what the SGA is doing about it. Tell me first, Tyler, what were some of the big takeaways for the SGA from the Minority Report?
Well, the biggest takeaway was actually improving our communication with students. A lot of the things that they discussed in the Minority Report are things that we've either talked about in the past or talking about now or plan to talk about in the near future. So it really disappointed me that we don't tell students clearly enough what we're working on. And there's really just two people working on the same thing is not efficient. So we really want to talk to students better about what we're doing and hopefully get them more involved as well.
When we talked, you did say that communication gap you thought was at large part some of the reason that students felt as though they were not being heard. With that said, what are some issues that you may have heard that you thought maybe we are not addressing or we're not being good enough advocates for the students?
One thing that the Minority Report really showed me was that when we think of diversity on campus, it's usually based on race, and specifically African American students. And one thing that really interested me that they said was looking into expanding programs for Latin American students. We do have an increasing Latin American student population on campus, and it's probably something that the university should look into, just because we are catering more to the Latin American student population. Really, the SGA can really help with that by working with administration, and to me, that's the most interesting point of the night, where it's something that didn't really cross my mind at all.
Explain the role of SGA a bit. How much of it is a judicial body? How much do you have power to change? How many decisions are you making? And how much of it is advocacy? How much of it is you all speaking up for the general student body?
Yeah, so most SGAs, they do things like pass legislation, bills and resolutions. We don't really do as much of that. We really like to kind of take ideas from students or from within SGA and then reach out to the appropriate administrators or staff members or faculty members and work with them more collaboratively rather than pass legislation and expect something to be done about it. So we really take the high road in collaborating and getting what's best on both parties' end. So coming out of the Minority Report, we can take the things that students said at that report and say, okay, tenured faculty aren't seeing as much tenure for faculty members who are minorities. So we can go to the provost and say, hey, students notice that their faculty members that they like that are most like them, the African American professors, Latin American professors, they aren't getting tenure, and what can we do about that? So we're not just going to pass legislation and expect it to be done. We're going to work collaboratively with administration.
I want to shift topics a bit, and you mentioned the provost. We learned that there was going to be a limit on regalia, the cords and stoles that students could wear, and this is something that you were against. Can you talk about that, why you were opposed to that, and what the SGA did in response to the limit?
I first saw it at the winter commencement in December, and I noticed the marshals asking students how many they had and asked them to take them off if they had more than 3. I looked into it over winter break, and as soon as we got back, met with the provost. She really explained that the basis for the decision was to make graduation more focused on academics rather than extracurricular activities. And also part of it was equity. So some students have a dozen stoles and cords while others have none. But one of the main things I took from that meeting was students have a lot of value-added experiences for themselves as individuals and value-added for the university while they're here representing students and the university and the community on campus, whatever it may be. And I think that personally that the university has an obligation to kind of showcase what students have done for themselves as individuals and future leaders, and as future leaders coming from Salisbury University as well.
I know that the lift of the ban was temporary. What do you see for the future?
Hopefully consistent student representation on the commencement committee where those decisions were made. It was brought to my attention that we did have students on it previously, but then either through lack of SGA knowledge as presidents come and go, just didn't have students on that committee. So I hope that we have permanent student representation on that committee so students can have their voice heard in the future.
Finally, Tyler, we're coming up on elections. We're coming up on SGA elections, and clearly there's so much going on. What do you see for the future of SGA for the next semester? Last year, you all ran unopposed. Will we see some more involvement from the students when it comes to the SGA as a whole and the board?
Definitely. We did open up 5 of the positions to more students on campus, not requiring SGA as a prerequisite. So now that we have more open positions, we're expecting more turnout by students, both within SGA and outside of SGA. We actually have a decent amount of students who haven't been in SGA before seeking these positions this year. So we really hope that SGA broadens its horizons with the students that participate in it and can really get more students on the campus involved in the future.
All right, Tyler, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And now Scott Purdy will give us a look at what to expect from the weather this week, including what you can expect if you're traveling home for the Easter weekend.
Wow, what a beautiful day it was out there, Eli. If you missed spring break, I hope today made you feel a little bit better about it. We did top out at 71 degrees after a cool morning at 46. Currently, 69 degrees, a few clouds in the area. For the most part, it's still a beautiful day out. It's still sunny too, daylight savings. As we look into our active weather coming in, we have a relatively well-developed low over the Mississippi Valley. That's going to track through Thursday afternoon closer to us. That's going to bring some strong winds out of the south. So tomorrow we're going to be in the mid-70s. Don't go to the beaches. The water's still in the 40s, and that's going to bring some cold air onto the beaches. Looking at tonight, though, we're going to have a very mild night, 51 degrees, pretty clear as well with some calm winds. They might even die out and start to swirl in the area. So maybe a good night to go in the backyard and just have a bonfire or something like that. Tomorrow, though, 74 degrees, not on the beaches, though. Probably in the 50s, low 50s at best in Ocean City. Low of 51 here in Salisbury, and it's going to be mostly sunny, and then those clouds might move in towards the end of the day because we do have a front approaching. Looking at our extended forecast, you can see the front that was approaching is now well offshore on Saturday after some rain on Friday. That's going to cool us off quite a bit, but it's going to be clear. Beautiful Saturday. Sunday, on the other hand, we're going to have a couple clouds move in. We have an onshore flow. That's going to bring the clouds. Warmer, though. Mid to low 60s. Great Easter. It won't rain. Going on to Monday, though, this is like playing poker. All the model guidance is differing. The GFS, the Euro, the NAM, everything's saying something different. I think it's going to rain on Monday. Others think it's going to rain on Tuesday. So count on rain on Monday. Come back if you want more details. Looking at our 7-day, very mild day tomorrow. On and off rain all day on Friday as that front passes us. Cool on Saturday with no clouds at all. And then we're going to have a warmer Sunday and then showers on Monday and Tuesday. Take that with a grain of salt. Back to Eli.
Over the break, instead of heading to the beach, a group of SU students chose to help those in need. Corey Duffer has more on that for us tonight.
11 years ago, the nation watched as Hurricane Katrina destroyed the towns and homes of people in New Orleans. It might be news to many that 11 years later, these people are still rebuilding and dealing with extreme loss and damages from this destruction. Samantha Beck, Salisbury University Volunteer Center Coordinator, organized an alternative spring break mission trip that took over 20 of Salisbury's students to New Orleans to rehabilitate parts of the town that are still affected by the damages of Hurricane Katrina.
The trip was designed so that students can go on spring break, go somewhere cool, somewhere different, but they also give back to the community and they get that experience out of it. So that was the goal of it. We went down there to work with Habitat and a few city parks.
It was amazing. The first couple of days we cleaned up a city park, and basically that was just pulling weeds and invasive species. And the second half of the trip was building a house through Habitat for Humanity. And I built a roof, which I've never done before, and I learned a lot of construction work, and I just feel inspired to go back again.
With hundreds of homes still damaged from Hurricane Katrina, there's still much work to be done. These students share their reactions about the ongoing process that's taking place to rebuild.
I'm surprised. It's been 10 years since Hurricane Katrina has happened, and there's still a lot of work to be done. The area we were was the most affected by Hurricane Katrina, and there were houses there that were desolate, and actually most of the houses there were desolate.
We drove through the 9th Ward, and it's just a completely different part. Like we were in the nicer part. We had dinner in one of the nicer areas, like the old money part, and they were beautiful houses, 100 years old, so nice. But then you go to the 9th Ward, and it's like they're not back yet. Their roads aren't paved, and it was amazing. I don't know what's at fault, but there's a lot of destruction still, and you could just tell that the houses have been abandoned.
The week spent in New Orleans opened the eyes of many who attended the trip. Valerie Gapko shares her experience and personal gain.
I was definitely very humbled. You don't think about all these people who don't have their houses. It's like you go home and you're like, oh, I have a house. Then you see all these other people and you're like, wow, like I need to be doing more. That's kind of how I felt like throughout the trip. I'm like, wow, I need to be doing more. I need to be doing more. Like it's not enough. But you know, after leaving New Orleans, I was like, all right, at least I made like some progress with that. Like we all felt like, okay, we did something, you know, but it was very humbling.
Salisbury University's Volunteer Center hopes to return to New Orleans and host a mission trip for spring break of 2017. Back to you, Eli.
Thanks, Corey. And at the end of this semester, SU says goodbye to Dr. Ron Dotterer, who served as the Dean of the Fulton School from 1993 to 2001, and who recently endowed a new English lecture series. We spoke to him and Fulton's current dean about Dr. Dotterer's long career and contributions to this university.
I hope they say that he did the best he could, that he was someone that was always trying to learn something new and that tried to make learning fun. About 15,000 students I've taught over 45 years. That's probably my legacy. The last week got a little thank you card from a student that's graduating that had a bunch of nice things in it about the ways I've impacted him as a teacher, as a student, and as a person, you know, helping him through some difficult patches in his life. So, I mean, it's hard to pick one, just as it's hard to say, this one of my children I love the most, you know.
Ron was dean for 9 years, so really quite critical early formative years still in terms of the school's identity. I think a great colleague, someone who really had a great understanding of liberal arts and the enduring importance of liberal arts in the experience of really all SU students, not just majors within the Fulton School.
You talked about him being a mentor. Is there anything that sticks out that he taught you or worked with you on that you've kind of kept through your years as dean?
If I had to narrow it to one thing, it's to sort of stay in touch with the humanity of the position. That people look to you as a leader, and that people, I think you want people to see who you are.
Dr. Dotterer, tell me about some of your favorite memories at SU.
That egret came and landed right in front of me, and that's the moment that I thought, I could live here. My perceptions were accurate, that it is a place that has that is student-centered, that is committed to its students. We're not just going through the motions. That we care about the whole person, and we want to see, we're willing to give as much time as it takes to help every student learn.
For everyone at SUTV News, I'm Eli Modlin, and thank you for joining us. Good night.